the recording.
The recording has started.
Okay, sounds good. I see Jim, I see Bill. All right, it is 6:03 p.m. We'll go do roll call. Darcy Hazelbaker.
Present.
Present. Rachel Sarah.
Here.
Damon Turner.
I'm here.
Betsy Besnick, not here yet. We'll just wait for her. Rick McDonald, present. So we have a quorum. We can go ahead and proceed. Approval, item number 2 on the agenda, approval of LAR and minutes from June 21st. Did you all have a chance to look at that? I know it came on kind of late, my fault. Do we have anybody that can approve, a motion to approve?
This is Damon. I looked at it. I motion to approve.
Okay, Damon, appreciate that. We have second.
Rachel Sarah, I second.
Second. Do a roll call vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Darcy.
I'm not allowed to, I wasn't at the last meeting.
You abstain, that's fine.
Yeah,
Not a problem. So we've got 3 ayes, 1 abstain. I think that constitutes an approval. And Darcy, I'm learning when you're not here, I'm really terrible at keeping track of that. So thank you for being here.
It's a little challenging, but I'm doing my best.
Yeah, well, after having failed twice, and you can hear editorials from Jody, I appreciate it. Not a problem. Okay. Item number 3 on the agenda, call to audience. Michael or Jody, is there anything that came in as a call to the audience?
No, nothing came in before meeting time.
Nothing came in on time. Okay. All right. Item number 4. Well, we have Jody, Tucson Pima County Historic Commission separation update. Jody, is there any new news? I know you updated us last time.
I can't recall exactly what I said last time, but we did have our 4th stakeholder meeting on January 16th, I believe it was. And we went through some recommendations that were going forward. There was agreement with a number of the recommendations, like the fines for unpermitted work, the deconstruction, the designation of interiors for individually listed properties and city-owned properties, et cetera. So those were generally supported. There was less support for the incorporation of the advisory boards into the plans review subcommittee, as expected. There was quite a bit of concern about that. There's a general feeling that the advisory board members don't really trust the neighborhood associations, and et cetera. So while we were also in that meeting, we received an email from the State Historic Preservation Office indicating that the National Park Service, which is the direction that we originally received was from them to separate, but that they were taking a second look at joint commissions, and they were going to study the joint commissions out there that are nationwide. There's a handful of them that currently operate like the Tucson Pima County Historical Commission does. So it's not really clear how long it will take the National Park Service to actually do the joint commission study. It could take a year, it could take a year and a half, who knows how long it's going to take. We do, because we now have this new information, expect to go back to Mayor and Council during a study session, either in August or September, likely September, to kind of give them an update and get direction from them if they still want to continue with the separation of the commission, or if they want to kind of halt that process. So we'll see that. We'll also give them an update on, our stakeholder meetings that we've had thus far and the feedback that we've received from them. At the last mayor and council meeting, Martha McClements, who is chair of the Armory Park Historic Zone Advisory Board, stood up and also voiced her concern. It should be noted, though, that the mayor's office has had representation at all of the stakeholder meetings, and some of the ward offices. We've invited all the ward offices, but certain ward offices have also attended those too, so they're aware. But really, that's just the update. We haven't scheduled our work session with the Historic Commission, which would be the next step. We have not scheduled that yet. But when we do, because we're going back with the study session, but once we do get that scheduled, then I'll let everybody know so that you're more than welcome to attend if you'd like to.
I think, you mentioned Martha. I mean, there is a general anxiety amongst the advisory boards, the 5 advisory boards, about the potential they be disillusioned and their voices be incorporated into something else. And I think, Jody said as much in a different way. So I don't know where this is all going to play itself out, but the actual structure in the end, I mean, Jody, if you disagree, say so, is still kind of up in the air, right? In terms of how it is organized, even if it does separate between the county and the city, how the advisory boards like us play into that is not clear.
Yeah, so I mean, ultimately, it's mayor and council that will make the decision. They could opt to incorporate, or they could opt to maintain as is. So, it's really their decision and how they want to move forward with that. We have also, as part of this whole endeavor, we will be requesting more staff too. Because I mean, there's 2 of us. We're here. We're both at this meeting. You've got the whole historic preservation staff captive here. But it is as more historic zones potentially come on board, because we've had 2 places talk to us about that. It is something that we would be requesting more staff, because it's hard to work with what we have now. We're like the rest of PDSD, rather overloaded. So, any way that you look at it, we'll be requesting more staff. And we'll see what mayor and council does. I don't know. I don't know. Ours are just recommendations, and they have minds of their own. As much as I like to do the Jedi mind trick on everybody, it never works in my favor. Never. Even my children.
Children. Yeah, forget about children. Well, I think, from a WUZAB point of view, we haven't really been as involved as Armory Park in thinking through the consequences to them or to us. But there are consequences. I mean, not consequences in the sense they're good or bad. It's just, it's going to be different. And we probably have to start. I don't know, Jody, I assume there's going to be another stakeholder meeting. Maybe you just said that. It sort of depends how it plays out.
We don't anticipate another stakeholder meeting, but we do anticipate there'll be work sessions with the Historic Commission, the Planning Commission, and then mayor and council. Those are all public meetings that anybody would be welcome to voice their concerns or their support or whatever, however you want to word it. Because it's not just the separation. I mean, there's multiple items. It's a rather large package that we're taking forward. So
right. And with respect to our HPZ, mechanically how that goes forward, depending on how those conversations go, changes the dynamic of what we do or what our role is. And by the way, for the record, I just want to say Betsy is on board. Hey Hey, Betsy.
At 6:12.
Hey there. Sorry I was late.
Nope, no worries. No worries. All right, are there any questions for Jody?
The other, what I can say, Mr. Chair, I think generally based on what Jody is saying and what is going on, these are strictly recommendations. I think the advisory board should continue to do their work. And if you have any guidelines that you are working on, to continue working on them without waiting for anything, because all these are basically recommendations. Nothing is final yet. So I think you will still continue to be relevant until whenever mayor and council decide otherwise. But right now, I think it's safe to say that you can continue to do your work the way you do, because without you, we're not going to be able to review the projects as we continue to review them.
Correct. I mean, correct. And with your design guidelines, as Michael brought it up, there's no discussion about eliminating the design guidelines that any of the districts have worked on. There is discussion about streamlining them so they're in one location. So currently you have the design guidelines from the different historic preservation zones, and then you have the technical standards manual, and then you have some language that's in the UDC. We intend to kind of put it all together so it's a one-stop area for you to look instead of like flip into multiple sections and going through everything. Mr. Glock had a question.
Yeah, I just saw that. I'm trying to scroll over. Hey, Jim, can you just unmute and ask your question?
So I'm zone historic R3. It's an H in front of my R3.
Right.
How many other neighborhood or historic districts have hard zoning that have that H in front of their zoning?
There's 5 total
Yeah.
historic preservation zones: Armory Park, West University, El Presidio, Barrio Historico, and Fort Lowell. There's
Right.
also, as a side note, not,
Thank you.
you know,
That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
oh, I was
Yeah.
just gonna add though, that there are 2 neighborhood preservation zones with a third potentially coming on board that have design guidelines that you have to adhere to. They're also National Register properties, but they don't have a board. They have a different process.
The genesis of my question was somewhat self-serving in that we do claim in West University to be the largest historic preservation zone in Arizona. And then I was looking at our historic preservation districts in Tucson and noticed that, you know, Sam Hughes is bigger than us, but they're not a zone. We are a zone.
No, they're not.
Anyway, so we're still we're still accurate in our claim for the large zone. So anyway, thank you. Sorry for the little sidebar, but I just had to ask.
No worries.
Yep, no worries.
I have a question. So a while back, Jody was asking you a few meetings ago, what was the reasoning for this? And you had said that they were saying that, you know, county and the different governing bodies shouldn't be working together. And now they're saying that there are commissions like that. So it seems like this whole thing is kind of futile. Am I right?
So 2 or so years ago, SHPO staff had like I forget what it's called. It's a nationwide SHPO staff meeting with the National Park Service, and somebody else, some other entity had brought up, hey, can 2 commissions jointly operate, 2 CLGs, certified local governments, jointly operate? And the National Park Service came back and said, no, that's not how it should be done. They should be separated. And so we started on the endeavor of looking at how to separate at that time. And then then the pandemic hit, we lost staff, we all went home. It kind of just dove down into this big old rabbit hole and it got put on hold. And then more recently, the Chris Cody, who was at the time the deputy SHPO, came down at the request of the mayor's office to talk during a mayor and council meeting and say, yeah, you know, they were given this direction. And so mayor and council directed us to start this process in earnest. And so we hired a consultant and started down this path based on that direction. The county, meanwhile, did some research, and even though they had started on the process too of working on the code language for the separation, they did some additional research and found several other cities that operate jointly. I would say it's probably less than 10 of the cities out of the 2,081 CLGs nationwide. It's about 10 that operate jointly, and queried SHPO, who then queried the NPS. And so they now are taking it up. So yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer that we've like expended all these funds and we've like done all this stuff, but the code needed some updating too. So this process also does some other code updates, not just the advisory boards, but some other things that have been kind of hanging out there too for a little while. So it is what it is, kind of messy, and it is what it is. But yeah, it is kind of contrary to what they had previously told us.
Just curious if I was remembering correctly or not. So thanks for the
You
update.
definitely remembered correctly. Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, it's not just the negative aspect of looking at saying, oh, the advisory board is going to go away. It may not go away. And even if they don't, and we continue on this path, there are many changes that have been proposed, that will be proposed to the code, that will probably make the historical review process a little bit more user-friendly than what it is at this point in time. So I see that as another benefit of this whole thing. So it's not just the advisory board. Let's not just look at the negative side of it, but let us see the whole process and see what advantage this might potentially bring to us.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's significant potential upside. Everything's not perfect. I think there's general concern across the advisory boards about the conversation where they go away and that voice gets lost from the individual neighborhoods. But I agree with you, Michael. There's other benefits that may come into play. And it isn't clear that the advisory boards are going to, their voices will be lost. Okay. Any other questions from board members? If not, I know, Jody, you got to move on to another meeting.
I have one quick one.
Yeah, Betsy.
So how would I know this is maybe putting the cart before the horse, but how would we revise our neighborhood plans then if we don't have these boards who know the neighborhoods well to do it? Would that be then left to the city, or
the neighborhood plans or the design
the
guidelines?
the design guidelines?
That's a good question. I don't think that we have spelled that out exactly, but it's definitely something I'll take a note of for a question that we should talk about.
Yeah, because that's where, in 5-10 years as technology advances, I worry that neighborhoods are going to lose say in how their plans are written. And I think, each neighborhood is going to want or need or want a different direction on that. And so we could easily end up with, the same plan for every neighborhood, which I don't think is appropriate. So.
And I think, Betsy, what you mean to be saying, just because I understand what you're saying. It's not the plans, but because design guidelines, the neighborhood
guidelines.
plans. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is the general concern, that the other 4 neighborhood associations, including ourselves, or HPCs, including 5, including ourselves, are very concerned about losing that individualism and neighborhood not oversight, but visibility into how the 5 individual, as Jody had said, potentially 7 individual neighborhoods are unique. So that is an area of concern, and it's why we need to be watching the process and engaged in the process. And it's not over. It's just in early stages. And as Michael and Jody have said, they're just the PDSD is in a very early recommendation stage. But the individual Tucson Neighborhood Association, neighborhood HPZs are anxious about just what you said.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a very big distinction here. The neighborhood per se, the neighborhood plans exist and they will continue to exist. I think basically we're talking of the historic preservation zone. Those are the ones that Betsy is actually concerned about. The neighborhood plans are there in Tucson and they will always remain. They are not part of this discussion here. For example, you have the West University Neighborhood Association. They are not part of this discussion. So those neighborhood plans will
I'm just
always
misusing words. I
Yeah,
apologize.
I think
understand the
Betsy
difference.
really meant design guidelines.
Yeah, so Betsy is actually talking the design guideline for the historic preservation zone,
Right.
which is different
Correct.
from the neighborhood.
Right. But I think that's actually what Betsy meant to say. She just,
It did. I'm doing 5 things at once. So yes, thank you guys.
Easy to do. Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions on that topic? Hearing none. Let's move on to item 5 on the agenda, reviews. Item A, HPZ 22043, 219 East 2nd Street. Permit number T22CM 02436. And I believe, Bill, are you speaking today for that?
Yep. And can you guys see my screen?
Yeah.
So this is, we did a courtesy review for this. I'm not sure how long ago. February, March, last fall. And it's more or less the same. We made a couple changes and based on the meeting that we had. So I'll just walk through. This is all the administrative stuff, the zoning comments. Here's the site located at the northwest corner of Arizona and 2nd Street. Zoomed in. And here's the development zone that property that affects the property in terms of looking at all the development regulations within the historic criteria. There's pictures of every single property along the development zone, and the most important is the alleyway or Arizona Avenue, because the project is going to exist. Let me draw. Exist in this area along the alleyway. It's a open steel carport if you looked at the drawings. And then here's going north of the property. You can see there's a contributing carport garage type structure located here. And then next north of that is a 2-story contributing property that's right on the alleyway, Arizona Avenue, sorry. And then north of that is a 1-story structure with parking that is immediately backs on to Arizona Avenue, with kind of post and beam construction in between, some masonry, storage or laundry, or maybe even residential units, I'm not sure. Very north end of Arizona Avenue on the west side is another 2-story structure that's close to the property line. And then this is marching back down. And so we're on the very north end looking east. There's a little arrow on the bottom to help you out. We have a garage. All these garage structures on the east side are more or less not contributing, but they exist and they're along that Arizona Avenue. Some more garage structures, a walled parking area, another garage structure, and then a shed here. And then finally, which I think you guys have reviewed ad nauseum, here's the kind of the garage storage structure of that property that's on the corner of 5th and 2nd. And then here's the properties along 2nd Street, across the street, and adjacent, the property inventory form. And this is the site, and this is looking from within the property. And so we're looking to the north, and it's in this area that the carport will be built. And you see this metal fence that goes along the east property line. A portion of that will be removed for the carport, which was approved. I don't know, Jim had that project approved years ago. And then here's the site looking kind of due east. And this area is where the carport is going to be placed. And there's that fence. So like this little door will stay. At some point, there'll be a section, a 10-foot, 11-foot section of the fence taken out. We're going to move over a door and build a gate to give better access to the south of the carport. So here's our site plan. This is just the site plan that I submitted to the city so we could receive the zoning comments to get this whole process started. And it's a better site plan for you to look at. So this is the existing site plan on the left. And here's that fence, and we'll remove, there's an existing gate, kind of a dual gate thing that he can drive his trucks into. We'll remove that, and then another portion south of that, about 7 feet, and put in the carport and another little gate right there. And then there'll be some stairs that go to the roof of the carport. And we made it, I think the overall dimension last time was like 10 something. And we made it a little wider based on some comments from folks on getting a car in and out of it, or a truck. Here's zoomed in. And so there's going to be 4 columns at the corners, and those columns will be a series of 4 posts that the beams will slide inside of. So we're kind of taking the Craftsman architecture of the area, the front porches, things like that, and using steel, and that's how we're tricking out the carport. And then you can see in the elevation how that works. Let me zoom in. So these are the 4 posts that are together, these vertical elements, and then the beam slides in between. And then the beam goes on top. And then there'll be decking and metal railing with stainless steel rod as the horizontals. So you can kind of just see through it. And then the stair will be a painted steel, whereas the rest of the steel is going to be cold rolled, clear sealed steel. And it'll just be painted black, but it'll have the same, I think it'll end up having the black railings. It's a pre-manufactured deal. And then the door for the garage is just going to kind of take on the same materiality as the gate over on the left and right of it. Just the rusted panel will end up trying to reuse that rusted perforated kind of screen stuff. And this is an elevation of it looking from the south, just so you can see kind of the simplicity of the structure with the beams and the columns. There's a cute little picture of it from Jim's house so that they can understand what it's going to look like from their house. And then this is all the stuff that you can read through to see how it's compatible with the design guidelines. But per the courtesy review, I don't remember any objections to anything. So if you guys want to start in, you can go for it. Thanks.
Any comments, questions, concerns from the board?
I think the only question I had was what's the decking material?
I was
Right
about to ask
now,
the same.
we're trying to find a good sustainable wood product. You know, cedar or locust or ipe, which I'm not totally sold on yet with ipe, but a wood product as opposed to Trex. But you wouldn't see it actually. It would be hidden by the steel fascia that's going to be running along the perimeter.
And Bill, I know the view you're showing us right now gives us an idea of what it's going to look like, but it actually, there's a fence that's blocking a lot of this view, right? From the
Yeah,
alley.
so the fence, there's kind of a more perforated screen in this little purple rectangle. And then there's a more opaque screen right here. And so the door will be like that opaque screen. So it'll be like that.
And nominally closed.
And
That's
that's
a view.
existing right now, that fence,
Yep.
correct? Okay.
Yeah. Let me go. I'll show you a picture of it. There it is. So there's that little perforated thing. And then there's the rusty steel panel.
Yeah. And that picture that you're showing us right now is someone standing on the far opposite extreme of the alley, right? Looking at the house.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah. It's kind of interesting because when you show the elevation view, it's sort of like a infinite God's view with no blockage. But in fact, if you just stand on the other side of the alley, you really can't see a lot of what you showed in that previous picture.
Yep.
I think my only comment is like I feel fine with the design. I think it's the drawings are just a little bit like they maybe leave some things open to interpretation as far as like us approving it as a board. So I guess I would just want to see how everyone else feels about that.
So Darcy, like what?
Well, I guess when I just look at the proposed east elevation, like we were just talking about, there's actually some like perforated metal that's not called out there, or
Oh, right, yeah.
what exactly the door looks
This is
like.
it's all listed right here, Darcy. Materials, columns, beams, fascia, cold rolled steel, clear steel. Railing, cold rolled steel railings, stainless steel horizontal. Deck, sustainable wood product. Garage door, metal panel and frame similar to existing fence. Stair, pre-manufactured spiral paint finish. And what else is there?
Well, I mean, I would just say that you mentioned that we won't see the deck, but it looks like I can see it in the proposed south elevation drawing. Is
That's
that
the joist.
sticking up above the
There's the beam,
fascia?
and then there's joist going across the other way, and then that's the fascia.
Yeah, and I'm not criticizing your drawings. I'm just talking about this from a submission standpoint of the board, and like if we're okay approving, some of this stuff that is.
Well, if you want, I can resubmit and draw little arrows to everything.
Well, I don't know if it's
I-
necessary yet. I'm just raising the question.
I think, if I may, and perhaps Darcy is asking a more detailed question than I was bringing up. It's like what you're showing on this particular elevation right now, if you were standing on the as far as you could on the other side of the alley, you wouldn't see this. I don't think.
You would see.
Well, you're not showing, let me say it this way. You're not showing us what we would see.
Well, you don't ask for perspectives, and that's not a requirement for the drawings.
I understand, but I think maybe to a degree, and correct me if I'm wrong, Darcy, that's kind of what you're asking, is what is this actually going to look like?
Yeah.
Maybe not perspective view. I know it's not required, but I think we're just trying to understand how this is.
Why wasn't this ever brought up in the courtesy review? For what you're bringing up, Richard? Just curious. It was
Well,
all good. It was all good in the courtesy review.
I feel like we brought up something. I can look through the previous notes, but I feel like there was a comment about this at some point of just trying to make sure everything was clear. So I'm just asking the board if we're okay with the kind of X-ray view that's happening with the elevation. And if we are, given that the materials are called out on the drawings, then I think it's not an issue.
I don't see it as an issue. I think he's showing more than what we would see. And I think that's just helping put it into perspective of the floor heights and all that. It's more detail than we tend to get
Right.
on a lot of submissions. So I don't think it's an issue, but.
I think it's a worthy question to ask, not in terms of whether this particular thing is okay. Just, and respectfully going back to Bill's question, we don't ask for perspective views. We ask for elevations and plan views. And, the elevations and plan views tend to be not perspective, not thinking about what it's going to look like from a perspective view, which isn't required by any of our guidelines. And I'm actually trying to point out that in the alleyways in particular, where the alleys are only 16, 20 feet wide, a lot of these elevation views aren't something one sees.
Richard,
Right.
I totally hear what you're saying. I think elevations are kind of crazy drawings. They're really just for construction. They're not to visualize. I totally
Right.
understand that.
Yeah, and I think
But
that's what
this is
Darcy's
a-
bringing.
This is an open air carport. This is, something you see through. And if you look at the development zone and you walk up and down the alleyway, there's solid structures going up and down on the property line. And this was kind of talked about in the first meeting, the courtesy review, on how transparent and airy this thing is in reality. And so part of the drawings are trying to show that. And so, I just,
Yeah.
say it, this it's kind of been discussed and was reviewed and passed more or less during the courtesy review.
Yeah, this is Damon. I don't take exception to any of the views. I think the views are fine. It's what we normally expect. I guess I thought Darcy was asking a different question, and I thought it was related to detail provided on some of the things like the door, where I think we maybe are being a little more lenient than normal, where we're just allowing sort of, similar to existing fence. I think on other views, we might have expected to see a more detailed design.
Yes, that's what
That's
I'm
all it
referring
is.
to.
It's steel frame with
Still,
panel.
I'm not saying,
Okay,
I'm not,
Mr. Chair,
I'm not saying I take exception to it. I'm just saying I think that's what the
Mr. Chair.
question was. And so I think,
Mr. Chair.
One moment, Michael.
so I think that's the question that's being asked.
I mean, Darcy, look at this drawing. There's a horizontal frame, square frame, and then there's a horizontal going across. Those are pieces of steel. Inside is metal panel. What else do
I
you want
know
to know?
that. I know that, but all I'm saying is it's leaving a lot of interpretation of an understanding of a drawing
All right.
and
Again,
just
I
being
can
called out.
resubmit and put arrows to that if you want. I mean,
No, I
it's-
don't think it's a question of pointing to things. I think it's a question of what really is the design. And I mean, part of it is I think a lot of times people are procuring pre-made things and we usually ask them to provide detail of what they're procuring. I think in this case, you're making things and trying to reuse materials. So it's a little bit of a different scenario. So I think the question that's being raised by Darcy is a valid question. And she was trying to ask the board, is this enough detail? And so I guess, and by the way, in the courtesy review, what I recall that we discussed was the railing and the horizontals and whether or not that was acceptable. I think we kind of worked our way through that. So for me, given the pictures, and I happen to just be familiar with Jim's house, I'm kind of satisfied with the detail, but I do think it is a little bit less than we might normally ask for. But given that I think a lot of this is kind of hand-built stuff and trying to reuse existing materials, that's sort of why why I'm accepting a little less detail than we might normally accept. Does that answer your question, Darcy? And that's just
Yeah.
my opinion. Other people might have a different position.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense. I mean, in terms of when we do ask, for cut sheets of doors and things like that. So are we wanting a section drawn of this garage door, or like Damon said, because we know you're reusing materials and things like that, that we're fine with this?
Yeah, I'm personally fine with it. And I, as Bill pointed out, I can sort of, from this, I can kind of envision the design. I think some of those metal panels are kind of rolled and patterned and stuff. And so they do have some character to them, which I will say, I'll go on record saying I like. I think Jim might have made them himself. And so what I'm envisioning is a steel structure with a horizontal and reuse of those rolled panels on the two sections, top and bottom. And I think that would look nice.
Nicely put, Damon. I think that's really, you hit the nail on the head. I agree.
So, okay, Michael, you had something you wanted to say?
No, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to bring to the attention of the board that a courtesy review is actually not anywhere in the code. It is just a friendly thing that we provide for historic preservation for applicants to come before the board or the review authority to get feedback. So it is not an exhaustive review. So if during the courtesy review, which Mr. Mackey did, the board did not come up with this, it's not actually required. So the board is still okay during the full review process that this one to ask more detailed questions than what was done during the courtesy review. That's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chair, members.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. And I do think we all understand that. But I think also the board, to the best of our ability, is trying to help the applicant as much as possible in a courtesy review to not have to come back and bring something that we understand differently later. So, but I do understand what the rules are. And I think Damon has helped clarify that quite a bit. And frankly, I'm kind of in the same position where I'm like, I'm okay with this. We may have learned a few things that we might say or ask differently in future courtesy reviews. But I think generally speaking, I think we're okay. I mean, I guess I'll go back to the board. I've heard from Rachel's and Betsy, Darcy, and Damon. I mean, you all seem to be okay with this.
Yeah, the only other question I had was, you provided a material on the horizontals. I think last time we talked that they were gonna be sort of small, like maybe not visible from a distance. Is that still the plan?
Yeah, they'll be stainless steel rod, like 1/2 inch, something like that.
Bill, is that called out? I don't see it.
Stainless steel horizontal under railing.
Yeah. I
Hold on, let me close the door.
yeah, no worries. I think we had this conversation about that particular aspect last time, and if you don't, there is a difference between just saying stainless steel horizontal and stainless steel horizontal 1/2 inch. That
You can put it in your motion that says that the
Yeah.
stainless steel rod or 1/2 inch or
yeah,
no
why don't we do
greater than
that?
1/2 inch.
Yeah,
All right, this is Damon. I'm gonna make a motion.
go for it.
I motion to approve as presented, with the clarification that the stainless steel horizontals are 1/2 inch or less.
This is Betsy, I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let me do a roll call vote, if I may. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Hi, Hazel Baker.
I don't know why I can't get my stupid video. There we go. Aye. Any dissents? I think no. All right, so
Who seconded the motion?
Betsy.
Betsy did. Betsy did.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Welcome.
okay. We have a motion, a second, and a unanimous approval by the board.
Is that it?
I think that's it.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
As always, you guys end up giving some advice that is worthy, and I appreciate it. It was a historic board that helped me design the panels that I used on the rusted metal fence way back when. So, and those are homemade, and we will be employing something similar in the doorway.
Awesome. And Jim, your background does not look like Tucson.
This is my professorial father's office that he made when he was, I think about 80 years old to hang out in. And I now get to enjoy it as my office when I'm in Idaho. So it's
Idaho, all right.
Pinewood paneling. He did a great job. It's really
All right.
nice. So it's got
All right.
it's got a lot of professorial aura associated with it. If any
Awesome.
of you find your way to North Idaho, you're welcome to come visit and swim and ski and otherwise have a great time.
Nice, nice.
If you
All
can
right.
stand with Idaho, so we'll go.
All
from
right.
there.
Enjoy. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Goodbye.
Yep, okay, goodbye, Bill. Okay. Item 6 on our agenda, West University Historic Preservation Zone Design Guidelines. We spent quite a bit of time at last meeting on that topic. Jody gave us a lot of her comments, most of which got incorporated into the Google Doc that we have for the design guidelines. I've got a few other notes that I got to incorporate. I'd probably be the next meeting when I have all that stuff finished. And then, Michael, I guess I'm going to send a note to you and Jody in 2 weeks, halfway between this and the next meeting, having incorporated, I think, into the next draft, all the comments. And then I'll leave it to you guys once I do that, and I'll copy the rest of the board as to what the next steps are. Okay?
We'll be waiting.
Yep, no worries.
Rick, for doing that.
Yep. A lot of fun. Okay, staff updates, item number 7 on the agenda. Michael, do we have any staff updates?
No, we don't have any issue. The update that we actually had to give you was given before on the on the commission split, which Jody did earlier today.
Okay,
We're still working on projects that we can bring to you as soon as they come due. Like we started preview, we talk about the capstone project that will be coming to you. That's all the update I have for you at this point.
so just a minor point of order. So the capstone is item number 8, future agenda items. Yep.
Jump in.
No worries. So that is, as far as you know, the next future agenda item is capstone.
Yes, it's capstone, and then I will definitely have some minor reviews to do in West University. So I'll be contacting the chair whenever that is ready to be set up.
Okay. And Michael, on the capstone agenda items, do you have reason to believe that will actually be on the next agenda, the August agenda?
They keep going back and forward. We actually thought they were going to be on this agenda. There are some items that we are requiring them to submit, which they have actually not submitted. That is why we pulled it off. It was actually supposed to be the only agenda on this meeting. But because they have not submitted and they promised they will submit, so I am hoping that we're about 90% sure that will be on the next agenda. But again, it has a little bit of controversy here and there. So, but we're pretty sure that it will come to you.
Well, so I have to ask, because it's a complex topic.
Yes.
And they've been to us before. We've asked a number of things, we, the board. So I think, we kind of need to see things in advance more days than than normal.
Okay.
And I don't know how to phrase that exactly.
No, I understand what
do you understand what I'm
saying.
saying? This can't
Yes, I
be,
understand that
2-3
the
days in
budget-
advance. There's a bunch of drawings that are dumped. This is the sophisticated kind of conversation. And the board members need to have the luxury to be able to see it, a week in advance, in my opinion, and really kind of form their thoughts around what questions to ask.
Okay, we can accommodate that. We'll make sure that we provide the information to you way in advance of the review. We also understand from our office that this is a big and controversial project. So there will be many questions that will be asked. I mean, we talked about it at the Historic Commission, and people still ask questions about it. So we are quite aware of the fact that this is a sensitive project. So we'll do our best to give you the information way in advance of the review.
Yeah.
And if we cannot provide that information because they have not provided the information to us, our best bet would be to work on moving it to the next meeting. We want to make sure that the board has sufficient time to have looked at the project before the review.
Okay.
That we can do.
Darcy, you had something you want to say?
Well, I just also wanted to like make the request or see if it's possible that, if we're gonna have other items, agenda items on the meeting at the same time, or if you guys know that in advance, like, can it be a special session or the other projects will go first and then this one will be at the end?
Our goal is to schedule that project on its own.
Great.
Yeah,
To not schedule it with other projects. And if we get to a situation where we would request you to have a special meeting, I think that is also an option that is available that we can use. At this point in time, we're not looking at using that option. We're just looking at trying to schedule that project on its own, just like we had this one here today. Our goal was actually to have the capstone project to be the one for today. And
Okay.
so what we're going to do, based on what I'm hearing, is that we will schedule the capstone project for a meeting on its own.
I appreciate
And
that.
if there's any other project that we determine that it's not going to take a lot of time for you, it's something that we think you can quickly go over it, then we can consider that, but our goal will be to schedule it alone.
Okay. All right, well, that's good. So schedule it alone. More advance notice than normal, a week, let's just say a week. And, I guess, Michael, I'd like to point out too, that the other reason for the week notice is, as you can well appreciate, normally in the call to audience, we never have anyone wanting to weigh in, never have anyone that's actually submitted something in advance. I think in this particular case, we owe adjacent neighborhoods, not just West University, the time to have awareness. This is on the agenda so that they can submit some questions in advance.
Yes.
Okay.
And Madam Secretary, if you would please make sure this thing feature in your legal action report. It'd be very interesting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item 9, and it's 7 o'clock. I think we're setting a record. That's great. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Darcy Hazelbaker, I motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
This is Rachel Sarah, I second.
Roll call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hazelbaker, aye.
And Sarah, say aye. Rachel, unmute.
Aye.
Aye. And this is Rick. I say aye. We have a all in favor saying aye. Yes, we adjourn at 7 o'clock, 1 hour. Perfect.
Oh, that's a record.
It's a record. I love it. Okay. See you guys next month or sooner.
Okay, thank
All
you
right.
all. I will proceed to stop the recording.
Thank you.